All right, it's still May 11th, around 3 p.m. We're going to take on part two of this story now. My indie darling of a screenplay that I think is has the most potential to spark my career in this field as an artist, as a writer, whatever. I really feel like this is the script that will launch me into that successful area of life. And now that I just found out today that the Summer Olympics is in Los Angeles in 2028. I'm like, this is the best time ever to make a movie like this dealing with the Olympics. It's a comedy, it's an indie comedy that can attract a teenage audience, young adults, older people from who were around in the 80s for that Olympics in Los Angeles. I'm biased, but I really feel like this is the most potential of any of my scripts, really. A small production company takes on a movie like this and it becomes a global hit. I really feel like it has that level of marketing attraction that could really draw in a crowd. And yeah, learning today when I did part one of this story that the Olympics is coming back to LA for the third time again, and the Coliseum is a great historical stadium that would be used in this filming if we were allowed to, at least. And yeah, it could create such a positive buzz. There's nothing dark really about this story. Am I making fun of people who live in poor conditions? No, I'm just starting. Well, you'll start to see as I go down part two of this story. I'm just showing reality, man. If that's what people are living in and there's no opportunity, at least in the 80s in Atlantic City, if you lived in kind of the slums of Atlantic City with not a lot of care given to you, provided by politicians or the city officials, no one really, you're just forgotten pretty much. There's always talks of forgotten Americans during big elections, but that can mean so many things. People in the inner city, people in the Rust Belt, people who had coal mining heritage. A lot of people get forgotten about, which is why really the only person you can rely on is yourself to get through life. How you want to get through life and how you want to term success before you even try to achieve success. How do you term it? These are a lot of the issues that you really have to constantly consider. How many people ask themselves that question as a child? What is success? Before you go to school and try to find a pathway towards success, you have to know what success means to you as an individual from a philosophical point of view, ethical point of view, and anything else you want to put there, political. Just as an individual, as a human being, what is success? That's a simple question, but it's not very simple once you start thinking about it. And then you have to actually get there somehow. That's where I'm at, and I'm 44. Was I trying to do this in my 20s? In terms of trying to form a business like this in my 20s? No. I was a drunk, stupid college kid going to stupid parties. Not all the time, but I wasn't in this mode that I am today because I didn't know what I wanted to do. If my consciousness today, whatever I am today, if you transport me back to that body when I was 20 in college, then yeah, I would be probably annoying to my teachers and clubs and other students because I'd be too motivated to do this shit. But how can I really make that point enough that I didn't have any of this stuff in my 20s or 30s? I had the beginning stages of music and beginning stages of some screenplays and story ideas. But I never put my mind to it and just worked on that. I always got distracted by stupid shit. Not always. It's not like I was completely useless, but I wasn't like I am today where I want to build something, leave a legacy of these movies and screenplays. These screenplays that hopefully get turned into movies because that's what shaped my life. Rocky, watching Rocky over and over again, then watching Buffalo 66 when I was in my 20s, listening to the Ramones in high school, listening to NoFX later, Bad Religion. Any art that has stayed with me for 20 years that I'm such a big fan of that I would actually get those tattooed on my body. I would get Buffalo 66, I don't know what kind of symbol I could get for that. But that was a major piece of art in my life at that point. I was probably in my 20s, I guess. And I was just struck by that movie. It just hit me. It's still on my top 5 list somewhere. Why do I still like The Wizard of Oz? Because that was the first one that did that to me as a kid. And then it just got more expansive as I got older and learned all these other symbolic elements of the Wizard of Oz. So, yeah, I want to provide a similar type of experience for anybody. It doesn't matter the age group. I could watch a movie today about some topic I might vaguely know about, and it would provide a different perspective on my life and on what I considered to be truth, but maybe it isn't. That's what good art can do. As a songwriter, I kind of noticed that more because I'm like, what am I going to write about in a punk album? The last year, I've written like maybe 3 punk albums or 4 punk albums. And I'm like, I'm 44. How am I going to appeal to a punk audience who are looking for, it's usually teenagers rebelling. It's very weird, but I still do it because I love the music and I just force myself to think of things to sing about. It doesn't mean it's fake. I don't write anything that would be completely like fake unless I'm writing it as like a mocking type of satire or something like that with some sarcasm. But I never present myself as fake through anything I've done in my art. I've never tried to, because the only motivation I have is to make cool shit, and I don't think you can get to that point if you're just making cliche cardboard cutout songs or movies or whatever else, visual arts, just copying and paste. The only time I was kind of wary about that was when I first made my album covers, which I was open about. I used the pictures I took at the Magic Gardens in Philadelphia. I went there in 2018 and spent a day there taking pictures of all the folk art. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just look up the Philadelphia Magic Gardens. So I created probably about 40 or so album covers using the pictures that I took. And then I manipulated the photos, and some of them you can still see the actual folk art from either Isaiah Zagar, he was the main artist there, the creator of all this crazy shit, or I don't know if other people contributed at some point. But yeah, I've been more than open about that if I didn't go to that Philadelphia Magic Gardens that day, which I went there because I was writing a screenplay and I kind of included that as a setting, the one that I was talking about before that I never really went back to, Elvis Presley Blues. Maybe one day I'll remix it and come up with a better story because the characters were good at least. But yeah, if I never went, and it's not like I took a big trip, it was only like 20 minutes from my place. And it just had that effect on me. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with these pictures. I saved them, and then 3 years later, I'm using them to form album covers. And I think I did a pretty good job for somebody with little to no experience with visual arts digital design and stuff like that. I think I did a pretty good job. And I just kept going back because I didn't want it to seem like they were just pictures. I wanted to put my own spin on the art. Sometimes more than that. Sometimes it just looked cool and I couldn't do anything else. So, of course, if I ever made money off any of this stuff, I said it before, I would give a portion to the Magic Gardens to make sure that they can keep inspiring other people. I'm sure there's other artists that probably have similar stories, whether from the Magic Gardens in Philly or other places around the world, that is full of inspiration like that. So, back to my first original point, yeah. Learning today that the Olympics is coming to LA in 2 years, it's like, it's the breaking point where I'm like, dude, who do I contact? This fucking script would be so perfect right now. It wouldn't take that long to make. Maybe it's just about an hour long movie. I don't know how you term that, but well, it's for my. I wrote it as an episode for my series, but if somebody's going to offer me money for the script and it becomes as successful as I picture it becoming, then yeah, it could be just a feature on its own. But again, I'd rather keep it to this universe because I have other stories built on this universe that we'll get to in a couple episodes. The character Manny, who we briefly got introduced to, he leads the next narrative. And there's a whole more political angle tied to it in Rinse and Repeat Part 2. That could be a feature film as well. It's got that kind of, well, it is based in the 1980s. It's almost like an 80s movie, an 80s political drama with some comedy attached to it. But I'll talk about that when I get there. We're still a couple episodes away from that one. But yeah, you're going to see as I get through the rest of this, the next 30 pages, there's so much potential for just classic cinema moments within this story and with how the director can frame these shots. So yeah, I need to meet the right people, collaborate, and get this shit done. Guarantee you this production would not be that crazy. That's why I'm calling this my absurdist manifesto indie darling script, because it is. It could be that indie hit of the year that makes more money than anyone thought possible because it's such a stupid concept. And if you like movies like Rocky or Breaking Away, which is a great movie, the cyclist in Indiana that wanted to be like an Italian cyclist. Great movie. And if you like underdog stories like that, this is similar. I don't know if you call Joe an underdog. He's an outsider, which is why I related it to Happy Gilmore. I related this story to Happy Gilmore because of the outsider type of appeal. You have this inner city chain smoking. Well, he's a murderer, even though he was convicted of murder, even though he didn't do it. But regardless, he's not the typical marathon runner that you picture on those marathons that some people pay attention to, at least. It's usually those skinny African dudes from Kenya or somewhere else that just blow everyone away, breaking records. But just like in football, I think marathon racing will become more extraordinary as the years go quickly, even in my generation. 20 years ago, you saw some of the football players that exist today, like the Jordan Mailata, and people like that are just like giant men who can run, and maybe it's the rugby side of it. Like that didn't exist 30 years ago in the NFL. People weren't that big. People were big, but not that big. So everything kind of evolves, hopefully into something better, something more inspiring, something more humane, even in sports, especially. Yeah, especially sports. Yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised. Of course, marathon times will get better and better, and they probably are right now. There's probably I don't pay attention to it. I'm sure there's people today that blow records from 10, 20 years ago. Just like the 4 minute mile, nobody thought that was possible. But yeah, keep the outsider appeal in your head as I'm reading this aloud for the next 30 pages. People love The Outsider. There's a movie called The Outsiders. Is that the Pony Boy one? Stay Golden? I think so. It's easy to root for the guy, slumdog millionaire coming out of the slums to win $1 million and get his romantic interest and live happily ever after. You can kind of compare this to an absurdist fairy tale. There's no love story, but it's more just the social commentary fairy tale about life in the 80s and life now. It's not that different. Yeah, things change in 50 years, hopefully for the better, but things also repeat. That's why people always say it's just history repeating itself. But it doesn't have to. It's just dependent upon what the people really want, right? If enough people say, why are we doing this? Didn't we try this 500 years ago and it didn't work? Didn't we try the war on drugs and it didn't work? Didn't we try all these foreign wars and nobody fucking supports this shit, but we do it anyway? Like, yeah, it's history repeating itself. I guess there isn't a lot ordinary people can do. Every man, every woman. You can only do so many pussy hat marches to really get your point across. Or the Tea Party. Or other shit like that. I always mention those two because they're the first two that pop in my head. But yeah, especially for me, I like the outsider approach of Joe, even though he might not consider himself that. He's just not very. He's not the type of person that really speaks his feelings or his thoughts on anything out loud. He's this strong and silent type that maybe a bit like Forrest Gump, but not really. The appeal of Forrest Gump was that he never grew up, kind of. He was just a kid, never questioned anything really, and just I don't know. What was the appeal of Forrest Gump? Was it like he was still a juvenile? He never really grew up to a cynical adult. Everyone else was getting involved with the hippies and doing cocaine, and Forrest Gump just always remained strong and steady. Forrest Gump. I don't know. I don't know why I'm bringing him up, other than that he could run really fast. Maybe there's a connection there too. But I think the main connection is just the appeal, the general appeal of being an outsider, going into, well, maybe Tiger Woods is kind of like that. There weren't a lot of black golfers at that point that were like winning like crazy. Or, well, you can go back to Jackie Robinson and people like that had to integrate, but I'm not really getting into racial stuff in this story. But he was an outsider, and yeah, he probably had it way tougher, of course, than everybody else. Just women breaking into the corporate ladder and all that shit over the years. I don't know if I even should bring this stuff up because it doesn't really connect to this story, but there's an appeal to that in cinema. The outsider, Erin Brockovich, is a better example. The Erin Brockovich story is another underdog story, David versus Goliath, either from a legal perspective or in a case like this, in a story like this, with Joe, who kind of had he got dealt a bad hand since high school, and now he's trying to, well, you'll see in this story now as we move forward, maybe his luck is changing, maybe it's not. Maybe what you think is a righteous path is not a righteous path. If you devote your life to a cause, but then as you get older, you realize this cause was bullshit and a waste of time, and it didn't really provide you much of a life experience, or it added to your level of ignorance and whatever. Is that really, you might question that as you get older. It goes back to the first thing I said, though. How do you term success? And in this story, I guess you could ask Joe that question in high school, and then after he gets out of jail, and now he just burnt down his place of employment, as he now also realizes his apartment got burnt down. How would he determine success at this time of his life? Just being able to have a hot meal and sleep somewhere. So it can get kind of a jaded conversation, especially as you get older. At this point, Joe's still in his young 20s, so he's feeling a bit still like his high school self, like his life got paused when that shit happened with the murder. His life, somebody hit the pause button. Zach Morris called timeout on Saved by the Bell, and now Joe is, I don't know. I guess I'll speak more to this as the story builds, because I'll start remembering stuff as I go through these pages. But these are all things to keep in mind. The appeal of a story like this, it could really make people laugh. It can make people cry. It can make people do both. It can make people examine their own life and their regrets before they die. All these things are involved in this story because that's what a marathon represents. A marathon is something most people will never even participate in. The people who actually train and finish a marathon, they're a special kind of human being, in my opinion. And I think a lot of people would agree with that. All right, we left off this story on page 31 towards the bottom, where we just ended the fire montage. Joe's realizing that, well, now his apartment's burnt down, and he just burnt down the video store, and that's where we're starting now. We're going to begin part 2 at a funeral home in the daytime. The next morning, as Joe walks out the front entrance to greet the depressing gray sky, carrying his mother's urn of ashes in a cheap metal container. Moments later, he's down a back alley. He lifts open a dumpster as the voiceover continues now. Joe Vio. And he's dumping his mother's ashes inside the dumpster. And Joe begins as voiceover. Don't judge. This dumpster seemed like a good enough place, especially now that I was homeless. Manny watches him from the alley, crouched against the wall, holding the pamphlet that Joe tossed to him previously, that Christian pamphlet. Manny, friend or family? Joe walks towards him and leans against his shopping cart full of scrap metal. Joe, mother. Manny, oh, sorry for your loss. He nods and thanks. Manny, you too close? They share a brief silence as Joe gazes back towards the dumpster. Joe, we shared some moments. He places the metal urn into the shopping cart. Joe, I think it's aluminum. Manny, thanks. I'll put it to good use. Joe nods and walks away while Manny flips through the pamphlet. Manny, at least let me say some final words. Joe turns back and bows his head as Manny stands by the dumpster like a preacher. and reads from a page, clearing his throat. Manny, you formed me inside my mother like cheese formed from milk. You dressed me with skin and flesh, sewed me together with bones and muscles. You gave me life and showed me kindness, and in your care you watched over my life. That's another Job verse, Job 10:9-12. Manny closes the pamphlet and stares towards Joe as the two men share a moment until Joe lights a cigarette, waves at his new friend, and walks away. All right. We get a little bit of a Manny scene there. Manny is like my version of like a homeless Jesus. He's a homeless preacher, kind of. But I won't talk too much until his episode shows up. All right. Like, what else was I going to say? Yeah, it's kind of reminiscent of that Big Lebowski scene where they have John Goodman's character. They put his ashes in like a aluminum coffee container, and then they just sprinkle it on the beach, but it goes all over Lebowski. That was probably in my head when I wrote this, because I was just thinking about that scene. And why would Joe pay money? I guess they just made him. They were like, you have to buy something and put her ashes in. So he just bought the cheapest thing, I guess. All right. Moments later, Joe is smoking a cigarette as he's walking towards a large crowd of marathon runners with numbered runners' bibs. And they're stretching and jumping up and down to get loose before the race. Arrogant runner, male in his 30s, notices Joe smoking as he's warming up. Arrogant runner. Hey, you mind, asshole? Race is about to start. Joe quickly puts a cigarette out, places the butt inside his pocket, and walks away. Joe, sorry. Arrogant runner. Trash like you ruined this city. Go kill yourself somewhere else. Joe pauses for a few moments. Almost like the scene in Back to the Future, Marty McFly, when they call him Yellow, and then he stops and squints, then he comes back. That's what Joe's doing. He turns back and he stares this arrogant runner down just as the starting gun goes off. And this large group of competitors run under a large banner. Atlantic City Marathon, December 4th, 1983. Why the hell are they having a marathon in the wintertime? I don't know. But I think with the research I did, sometimes they have these marathons in the cold weather. Don't ask me how. I want to feel like this is true. If you want to make it like later in the winter, maybe February, you could do that too, or the end of winter. Why would you hold a marathon in the middle of December when it's probably like 40 degrees? I have no idea. But I guess I gotta consult Google really quickly. Do they hold marathons in the winter? And if Google says yes, then I feel like it's justified. Do they hold... I did do research on various time frames of when these when marathons were held in the early 80s as it led up to the 84 Olympics, the preliminaries and everything. Yes, numerous marathons are held during winter, blah, blah, blah. All right. I'm going to look up New Jersey because they're mentioning like Arizona and California, and yeah, you could hold marathons any time there. Does New Jersey, good old Jersey, they want to make these runners suffer. Yeah. There are New Jersey running events in December and January, but hopefully it makes sense. People who run marathons, hopefully it makes sense. I could look that up, the 1983 Atlantic City Marathon, because that is a thing. When was it held? Let me see. Was there a reason I made it? Atlantic City Marathon. Because now it's going to bug me if I don't look this up. Marathon date. All right. Based on historical records, the Atlantic City Marathon was held on October 16th, 1983. So that's a little bit different. That's actually pretty nice weather to run in. But I just had to change it because, all right, maybe the one in 1984. 1984. Why did I search 83? I don't know. 1984 might have been December for some reason. Maybe they were preparing for the Olympics, and that's why they did that. All right, I was correct. The 1984 Atlantic City Marathon actually took place on December 2nd, 1980. Yeah, December 2nd, 1984. It was a notable event. And yeah, I don't know why. The winner in the men's was 2 hours and 27 minutes, if anyone's interested in that. The women's was 2:58. Come on, ladies. Yeah, I don't know why. Why would you hold a marathon in December? But all right, whatever. I'm talking too much about this. So it does make sense. I did do research on this. Yeah. All right. So Joe, all these runners are going underneath the banner. Joe's keeping his sights on this man. As the other runners zoom past him, after a few moments, he rips his nose bandage off. So he still has all these bandages on his face from when they hit him with the brick and broke his nose. He tosses the bandage onto the pavement, then charges through the packed crowd. Joe VO. Something changed that morning. He runs faster through the sea of bodies. Joe VO. Like a veil had been lifted. He catches up to arrogant runner and stares him down. Joe VO. I knew I had to beat this guy. He runs stride by stride with him. Joe VO. Maybe it was that inspirational funeral service for my mother. He picks up the pace and easily zips right on by, leaving the arrogant runner shocked and angry. We're going to move a little bit farther through this marathon now. And this is when I hear the Black Disciple by Donald Byrd playing from the A New Perspective album, or whatever song you want to use. But that's what I was kind of listening to when I was writing this. Joe in his sweaty clothing, so he's got his jeans on still. He's not in marathon attire. And he's running by more professionally attired competitors who don't quite know what to make of him as they eye him with confusion. Joe VO. It was the first time I really ran in years. He passes more runners who cannot believe his pace. Joe VO. And it felt fucking great. That's where I'm hearing the Ray Liotta voice. I hear Ray Liotta singing this, or not singing, reading these lines of the voiceover. A bit later in the race, Joe, so these are all cuts that go to different parts of this race as he's gaining on other people. He's near the front now as Joe runs by a skinny African man who's wearing professional running attire and is rather caught off guard by Joe's unorthodox style and appearance. Joe VO. Look at this guy. He must weigh, 87 pounds, soaking wet? The African man sprints faster and passes Joe. Joe VO. Probably has a carefully managed diet and workout routine and a professional trainer who checks his body mass index every few weeks. Joe grabs the cigarette butt from his pocket and lights it up while charging ahead faster. Joe VO. As he dreams of the fame and glory that this 26.2 mile trek can provide. He passes the African man again, leaving him in his dust this time as he puffs his cigarette. Joe VO. Seems like a nice enough guy, but he just doesn't understand the joy of running. Later in the race, farther down this marathon trek. Joe is running next to a very professional competitor with all the best corporate sponsored attire, sneakers, socks, sunglasses, visor, like he just came off a TV set for a running commercial. This guy's probably like leading the race at this point. Joe VO. Running is just a job to people like that. They battle each other side by side, both trying to set the faster pace. Joe VO. It turned out this guy I'm about to smoke was a top-ranked American marathon runner going into the Olympic trial. Joe speeds by him, then casually holds up both middle fingers behind his back. So that's probably some Happy Gilmore stuff there. Joe VO. Fuck your corporate sponsored visor and fuck your top of the line personalized running sneakers. I don't think you have to put running, whatever you want to put there, running cleats. All right, we're on page 36. Now it's even later in the race as Joe sprints. He's like sprinting in this marathon with a more determined scowl than before. No other competitors in sight behind him. Joe VO. By mile 15, I forgot all about my loss of employment and my new homeless status. He spits out a load of mucus, lights a cig, then runs even faster. Joe VO. That's the real magic of running, losing all sense of self. He grabs his ribs and winces in pain. Joe VO. Jesus Christ, broken ribs do take forever to heal properly, though. Confused fans watch him from both sides of the street as he sprints on by. Joe VO. It's amazing when you can accomplish when you just tell your body to shut the fuck up. Later in the race, another cut there to closer to the finish line. Joe is running at a very fast pace now, puffing on another cigarette, sweat pouring down his face. Joe VO. By mile 20, I forgot what my fucking name was. Fans on both sides of the street begin to cheer him on now, as bloody mucus shoots from his nostril. Not another runner in sight. Joe VO. That's when you really start appreciating what running can provide. He waves to the spectators, then picks up his pace even more. Now we're moving to another time cut later in the race. These are very quick scenes to show him racing and how his race is going. Joe is now crossing the finish line, puffing on a cigarette. Not a runner in sight. So he's probably been smoking cigarettes like half the fucking race. He collapses onto the street and vomits while he stares toward the running time clock, 2 hours and 3 minutes and 14 seconds. Joe VO. Finishing a marathon is an ego killer, whether you do it in just over 2 hours or if it takes you 2 days. A few local news reporters approach him as he lights another cig. Joe VO. You better be prepared to kill all those nagging voices of resistance echoing in your head with excuse after excuse while asking, just who the fuck do you think you are to be running a race like this? That's coming from Stephen Pressfield. Voices of resistance. I think he talks about resistance a lot as you're trying to do anything in life, but he's speaking of writing and kind of dealing with the muse and other people criticizing your work, maybe. I don't remember his book that well at this point, but I know that's a line he uses a lot. These nagging voices of resistance telling you can't do this, you're not good enough, why are you doing this, why do you deserve to do this, blah, blah, blah. Just fucking do it, man, just do it. Like the Nike shit. He limps down the street, probably the best motto for a company ever, just do it. Like that could be, I think that's the best advertising slogan of all time. He limps down the street, hounded by reporters and cheering fans. So he just finished this marathon and he's completely, like he's almost dead at this point. barely walking. Joe VO. Well, fuck all those voices, whether internal or external. Fuck all of them. He gazes towards the sky and primal screams at the top of his lungs. Joe VO. All in all, it was a very productive morning. His high school coach, Stan, now in his late 40s, balding and overweight, spots him. Stan. Joe? Stan walks towards him as a larger crowd forms. Stan. Louder. Joe! Joe doesn't hear him and limps farther along down the street. Joe VO. You won't find my name in any official recordings that day, since I wasn't actually registered. Stan inches his way through the crowd to get closer to him, but gets pushed back. Joe VO. But for the people who personally witnessed that marathon, there was only one true winner. Stan gives up as Joe walks farther down the street, surrounded by fans and reporters. Really, it's more the spectacle, the novelty. Like, what the fuck? Did this guy really run this race in his jeans, covered in blood and mucus? All right. Later that night, after his race, Joe is sleeping like a smiling baby on some cardboard boxes wrapped in some old rolls of discarded carpeting. So he's keeping himself warm now that he's homeless in this roll of discarded carpeting. Joe VO. I slept like a baby that night, feeling like I had something to strive towards again. That the feeling of purpose that you might lose as you get older. That's what Joe is kind of realizing again in his young life. He's still only like 20 years old here. Or maybe mid-20s. Maybe he's been working at that video store for like 3-4 years after he got out of juvie. All right, the next morning he's still in the alley sleeping on the cardboard boxes. And he's covered in old discarded carpeting, just like he was in the nighttime. As Stan bends down and shakes his side. Stan. Hey. He shakes him harder. Stan. Coach Stan, from high school. Remember? Joe finally wakes up, stretches his sore muscles towards the sky, then he lights a cigarette. Joe. Oh, hey, Coach. Stan. Hey yourself there. He helps him to his feet. Stan. I was at that race yesterday. Saw you at the finish. You ran a great race, kid. Really great. Joe doesn't pay him any mind and puffs his cig. Stan. Come on, champ. Let me buy you breakfast. And now the journey to the Olympics begins. Dun, 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 dun. Joe is eating in his diner now, at a table with Stan, while a news report about the marathon plays on a TV above the counter. So I'm using the trope of television news again to lead the story forward. Sorry, news reporter on TV is now speaking. And even though he was not the official winner, all everyone wants to know today is just who was this mysterious runner. Stan eyes Joe, who is now scarfing down more sausages. Stan, you really did run a great race, kid. A still picture of Joe smoking a cig during the marathon with his middle fingers up is shown on the news report. News reporter on TV. Or was it all just some juvenile prank? Stan blows his nose and fixes his greasy, balding hair. Stan towards the TV. Fuck you, tightwad. Now he's talking to Joe. If you had registered, you'd be looking at a pretty nice payday right now. Joe doesn't appear very interested as he stuffs his face with more food. Stan. Forget about all that now. I can help you out. You know, the training, transportation costs, scheduling. Joe stares towards him blankly. Stan. What I'm trying to say is that I want to be your coach, your manager. Stan lights a cigarette, coughs, then spits up some mucus into a napkin. Stan, Boston, Cleveland. Gets you ready for the trial in Buffalo, just like old times. All the way to Los Angeles, kid. Talking about the goddamn Olympics here. He smacks Joe on the shoulder to get his full attention. Stan, all that bad shit that went down during high school, just let that fuel you. Joe lights another cigarette. Stan, you still got that special burst, that fire inside. I truly believe it. What do you say, kid? Joe ponders. Stan, what? You got something more pressing in your life to attend to? A burly working grunt, male, 20s, with a safety vest, like this really meathead, strong dude, approaches the table. Burly working grunt to Joe. Hey, you the guy from the TV, right? Joe stares blankly towards him and exhales smoke. Burly working grunt. The dude who won the marathon yesterday. You really run that whole race, or was it all just Stan cuts him off and stares towards him. So I picture this dude's like 7 foot tall, or not that tall, but something crazy. Stan's this little meatball dude, fat and greasy with like balding hair, and he's looking up at this tower of a man. Stan, listen, guy, we're talking business here, so step off. Burly working grunt. Was I talking to you, you old fart? Stan gets in his face. Stan, well, you're talking to me now. Burly working grunt. What you want, old man? They said that. They begin shoving each other, then the grunt punches Stan in the jaw, sending him flying down onto the floor. This huge working grunt is now stomping down on Stan's head until Joe rises and pushes him away. Joe, VO. This is how my journey to the 1984 Olympics began. Stan rises up, jumps on the man's back, as he and Joe comically try to take him down, but the man is too strong for both of them. Stan grabs a frying pan from the nearby stovetop and hits the man over the head, then darts for the exit with Joe while the man topples down. All right, now we got Stan as a part of this story. Again, I picture him as Can't Stand You, Jason Alexander, but I don't know. That's just what I picture. Just a kind of a funny, not that, a funny character here. Just as Joe was struggling, this guy's probably, I don't know, he's no longer coaching and he's trying to relive his glory days through Joe. So it's kind of a funny relationship. We're now at Stan's row home. He lives in kind of a rundown part of Atlantic City as well. It's the next morning. Joe is waking up in this closet-sized room in only his underwear, with his scars and bruises and cuts showing all over his body. He lights a cigarette and stares towards boxes scattered on the floor of old track trophies, high school championship plaques, and old high school track uniforms. Now we're in Stan's bathroom as Stan fixes what little hair he has left, and he's trimming his nose hair and then cleaning his earwax. And as Joe gives a voiceover, Stan's an overall good guy. Stan is snorting a few lines of cocaine off the sink. Joe voiceover. And he was always a pretty good coach from what I remembered. Now Stan is slapping himself in the face over and over while screaming into the mirror to psych himself up. Moments later, Stan walks in the bedroom where Joe is smoking his cigarette. He's dressed in his old track coach uniform, which doesn't fit him nearly as well anymore as his large gut hangs out. Stan, day one, let's go now, buddy boy. He drags Joe, still only in his underwear, off the bed. Joe, VO. Plus, it was better than sleeping at a homeless shelter through the winter. Stan leads Joe to the door. Stan, let's get you cleaned up first. Now we're in the backyard. as Joe shivers in only his underwear, and we're still in December here. It's probably freezing cold out. He's puffing his cigarette as Stan washes him with his garden hose under this gray sky. He directs the water towards Joe's face, knocking the cigarette from his mouth, while Joe spits out water, then directs the water towards his crotch. Well, so this is Stan pointing the hose towards Joe's crotch, hitting him in the balls. Joe, VO. Day one of training started out pretty shitty. Now we're going for a very long montage. I just called it a training montage. Again, listen to Donald Byrd, Elijah. That's the recommendation for this scene, but whatever, man. I know you're not supposed to put music in this, but it was hard for me not to in any of my scripts. The music leads to the spirit and the atmosphere I'm going for. So I can't go without music, man. All right, we are at a city street to start this montage, and you could think of scenes from Rocky and other movies. It's kind of a satire on Rocky at this point. Joe is jogging down a dangerous part of the city as he runs past gang members, dope fiends, and vagrants. Joe, VO. Training was always hard for me to begin with. We meet Flip again as he stands with Gabby and some other prostitutes as Joe jogs past them. Joe, VO. You can never really replicate the competitive nature of running an actual race. Stan drives his old rundown Cadillac behind him, then snorts cocaine off the dashboard. He throws an empty beer bottle out the window towards Joe, which barely misses him and smashes down by his feet. Stan, faster, you shit-stained cunt! Joe jogs a little faster as another beer bottle hits him in the back, thrown from Stan. Joe, VO. No matter how hard Coach tried. Now later in the day, we're at Jimmy's newsstand as Joe jogs under this gray sky and stops at this newsstand to buy cigarettes while he's jogging. He buys a pack, he lights one of the cigarettes up, and waves bye to Jimmy, the newsstand vendor, then continues his training. All right, that night we're in the bedroom as Joe passes out in bed, a lit cigarette dangling in his lips. He's just exhausted at this point. Joe, VO. And Coach Stan really did prove to be a valuable asset, excuse me. Stan walks in wearing only tighty-whities, his gut hanging out. He takes the cigarette out of Joe's mouth, puts it out, then tucks him in, and softly hums a lullaby in his ear. Joe wakes up and doesn't quite know how to react to Stan's serenade. Just a bit of comedy there. All right, the next day, Joe is jogging by Stan, who's buying cocaine from his drug dealer in a back alley. His drug dealer, the young male. The anxious dealer freaks out as Joe approaches them in his hoodie and shoots him in the shoulder. So the anxious drug dealer sees this guy running towards him in a hoodie and is just kind of paranoid about it and shoots Joe right in the shoulder. Joe, VO. Most of the time, at least. These voiceovers make more sense when you kind of read them together. So before that, he was saying Coach Stan proved to be a valuable asset. Now he's saying, most of the time at least. Joe now falls over as blood pours out from his gunshot wound, while Stan runs over to tend to him. Stan towards the dealer. What the fuck? You just shot my golden ticket. The confused dealer shrugs his shoulders. Moments later, Stan drives his car in a panic, while Joe sits in the back seat, trying to light a cig, as the dealer presses a rag over his gunshot wound. Dealer, I'm sorry, bro, but you really can't be sneaking up on people like that. We're back at the free clinic later on as Joe is sitting on a cheap stained hospital bed as the same doctor from before pulls the bullet out of his shoulder. The next morning, Joe is waking up in pain, grabbing his bandaged shoulder and stretching it out while gazing out the window at the gray sky. Stan's still in the back in the bathroom, and he's snorting more cocaine and flicking his hair back. Later that day, Joe is jogging through the neighborhood like Rocky. This is still the montage, it just goes on for a long time. Joe VO. I really grew to love the city that winter. He's passing deep fiends as they cheer him on. So they're getting to know him, just like the neighborhood in Rocky. They would cheer him on as Rocky's running through South Philadelphia. Joe's running through like the slums of Atlantic City, and people are cheering him on. Dope fiends and Flip and Gabby and the other prostitutes. Now they're like on his side, like cheering for him. They probably heard he's training for the Olympics, and they're like cheering for the guy now. A homeless woman with barely any teeth, she's cheering him on as he runs by her. Joe voiceover, and the city really seemed to love me back. Now Stan's dealer is cheering him on as he runs by him, as he then makes another drug deal. And then the cross-dressing bearded man, dressed in a luxurious fur coat, lifts up his 40 ounce in salute as Joe runs by and waves. Now we're back at Jimmy's newsstand later on, or this could be another day. Like, it's a montage, so you could manipulate time here. Maybe this is like a week later. Jimmy proudly tosses Joe a pack of cigarettes. Jimmy, on the house. Joe nods and thanks, lights one up, and then he runs on faster. So he's beginning to get even more athletic in his body, and his demeanor's changing. He's becoming like a more happy stoic. All right. The next day, we're drifting towards a large banner that reads Boston Marathon, April 16th, 1984. So, yeah, I would say you could even spread some of those scenes out when he's back in Atlantic City at Jimmy's newsstand. Maybe it's springtime here. So the winter's over. But now we're going towards this is now the Boston Marathon, April 16th, 1984. Joe is crossing the finish line in first place, dressed in ripped jeans, a thrift store t-shirt, and a numbered runner's bib. With no other runners in sight, Stan is eyeing the time clock, 2 hours, 3 minutes, and 14 seconds, and cannot believe his eyes as he jumps up in celebration. I think that was the exact time as the other one. Joe VO. Boston was my first official time. Now he's back at Jimmy's newsstand. Morning newspapers are delivered in bundles in front of the newsstand, and we're viewing the front page, which shows a picture of Joe from the Boston Marathon with the headline, Smokin' Joe Sets World Record. Jimmy reads the paper and smiles proudly. Joe VO. It was kind of a big deal. I know Smoking Joe is also Joe Frazier, but what else could I call the guy? Cigarette Joe, Flaming Joe, that kind of has a different connotation. So, whatever. This is another Smoking Joe. I think Joe Frazier was Smoking Joe Frazier, wasn't he? I don't know if that had to do with him smoking cigarettes or cigars, but I really didn't know what else to call him as a nickname. From a marketing angle, how can you not call him Smoking Joe? He's a chain-smoking marathon runner. All right, moving on. We're now drifting in another city street, and we read another large banner that says Cleveland Marathon, May 20th, 1984. I'm pretty sure these are the actual dates because I looked these up as I was doing this. Joe's in ripped jeans, a stained t-shirt, and a numbered runner's bib, and he's running towards a small group of fans on the side of the street who hold out lit cigs for him like they were handing out cups of water. You know how, the marathon, they hand out Gatorade cups? When Joe's running by, they have cigarettes ready to hand him. So he grabs one of the cigarettes from a fan, nods and thanks, then keeps on running. Joe VO. Shaved almost 6 minutes off the previous world record. Joe's crossing the finish line now at the Cleveland Marathon. No competitors in sight. As she collapses down onto the pavement, Stan eyes the time clock. 2 hours, 1 second. 2 hours, 1 minute, 22 seconds. Yeah, that's right. Joe VO. Took about 2 minutes off my time in Cleveland. Might not seem like a lot, but believe me, 2 minutes is an eternity to marathon runners. Joe is holding up a huge check, with Stan next to him like a proud father. They both light cigarettes, then throw up, and Joe's throwing up both of his middle fingers. Well, Stan could be doing it too. It's his trademark now. Joe's trademark is smoking a cigarette and holding out both of his middle fingers, as his adoring fans throw up their middle fingers in tribute, and reporters take pictures as their cameras flash. All right, later on, we're drifting towards another large banner, Buffalo, New York, Olympic Marathon time travel, May 26, 1984. Joe VO. The Olympic time travel was just 6 days after the Cleveland race. Joe runs towards the finish line, dressed in more conventional running shorts, t-shirt, and the runner's bib. He places a cig in his mouth, and a fan runs out and lights it for him. Joe VO. According to most experts, you should only run a few marathons a year, 2 or 3 at most. He crosses the finish line, no other competitors in sight, then collapses onto the pavement, completely exhausted. Joe VO. I almost broke the 2-hour mark that day. Stan eyes the time clock, 2 hours, 49 seconds. Joe VO. Fuck most experts. Joe's fans, many smoking cigarettes, lift him up in the air and carry him on their shoulders. Joe VO. Gained a nice little following, too. Now we're inside a photo studio as the photographer snaps pictures of Joe in his track gear as he's smoking a cigarette, standing next to a red cigarette logo. Joe VO. And Stan made sure to make all the cash he could off of endorsements. Outside Jimmy's newsstand, we're now viewing an ad on the back of the newsstand of Joe smoking a red cigarette with the tagline, "Run like the champ, smoke like the champ, support our USA Olympic athletes." I used to work for a company that did outdoor advertising, and they would put ads on the back of newsstands. So I was like, yeah, that would work. In Atlantic City, they'd want to use Joe as the market for selling cigarettes to local fans like that. All right. Now we're in Los Angeles at the airport, inside as we're drifting towards a large banner with the Olympic rings. 1984 Olympics, Los Angeles. Joe and Stan grab their luggage and walk towards the exit as Joe's completing this voiceover now and ending this training montage. When we finally got to Los Angeles in August, I was around minus 1,000 on the money line to win the men's marathon. I was around minus 1,000. That's how you say it in gambling, right? I was around minus 1,000 on the money line to win the men's marathon. And that's the end of this montage. So we went through maybe 4 or 5 months there. We started in the winter time in December. And when we finish this, we're in the Summer Olympics in Los Angeles. So yeah, we went through maybe 6 months here in this montage. Yeah, you could extend this if you wanted to make this a longer movie. You could I always equate it to the movie, or let me do it now at least. I'll equate this to the movie Invincible, which was a good movie. I'm an Eagles fan, so of course I'm supposed to like it. Vince Papale, he actually has a connection to the high school I went to in southern New Jersey. I'm supposed to like that movie. I'm an Eagles fan. Vince Papale. It's a great story, underdog story, similar to something like this. But then they put like the love story and all these other angles. And that's fine. It's a part of his life. But do you want to ruin the spirit of a story as stupid as this by putting a cliche love story? I don't think it works. It just slows up the story. People don't care if Joe falls in love and has a different life, a personal life. That's not what this movie is supposed to represent. It's just a satire. It's maybe not so much a satire. It's just an absurd look, almost like a creative writing experiment. I don't even remember how I started this idea. Might have came from when I was running at work, but I really don't know. It was one of those organic origins that I just started writing and writing and writing, and all this came out. All right, we're on page 48. We just finished that long montage. We're in Los Angeles now as Joe waits to run the Olympic marathon, and we're at a gas station at nighttime. Joe's walking up to the cashier, a male in his 20s. Joe, 2 packs of Reds. The cashier hands him 2 packs and stares at him curiously. Gas station cashier. Hey, aren't you that runner dude? Joe pays him just as 2 masked men storm inside, armed with handguns. Joe, VO. If the public saw what happened the night before the race, my odds might have gone down a bit. Masked man 1 to Joe. Hey, face the fucking floor. He kicks Joe in the kneecap and stomps his ribs. Joe, VO. I always imagined the West Coast to be more peaceful. The man kicks Joe in the face now, over and over, then stomps down hard on his ankles, while Masked Man 2 grabs the cash from the register. Masked Man 2. And don't call the fucking cops. Both masked men violently kick Joe in the face and ribs, then run out. Joe, VO. This was the first moment when I really questioned if I had what it took to crush all those negative forces trying to push me down. He lays in the fetal position near the cash register, struggling to breathe, as the cashier leans over to check on him. Gas station cashier, you okay, man? Now, I have a couple thoughts here that I was just pondering to myself as I was reading this. Often as I'm reading the lines, I get different interpretations. Is it just bad luck that Joe is like Job? Joe is Job. Like, that's another reason I named him Joe, because he's kind of the Job character. Bad things just keep happening to him, and he's just trying to stay even keel about it. From the beginning, he didn't have the greatest household, but he still was an athlete, whatever. And then all the shit with his mother and the cop dying and him being blamed for it, taking the rap for his mother, and then all these other things that happens to him throughout his life. He is a Job character. So it fits this story. He just happens to be in a gas station as these 2 men walk in and beat the shit out of him. I was also thinking maybe these men are trying to fix the race, so they beat the shit out of him so they can bet against him and make a shit ton of money. I don't know. You don't have to get farther than what I just said. That he's a Job character. Job was constantly tested for whatever reason. The God and devil made a bet. And he was a Job character. That's all really you need to explain this as. Later that night, Joe is on the front curb of the gas station, his face completely bruised and bloodied as he puffs a cigarette, as a police officer in his 30s, a male, writes something down in his notepad. Police officer, did you get a good look? Joe shakes his head no, then rises up slowly and limps away, holding his injured ribs. Police officer, hey. Joe turns his head back. Police officer, aren't you that runner guy? Joe ignores him and limps away. Now we're in the hotel room bathroom. As Joe is in the bathtub full of ice water, wheezing with every breath he takes, both ankles badly swollen, knees bruised, his ribs and chest a deep shade of purple. So maybe you could even make something more believable. Maybe these two masked guys are pointing the gun at the cashier and he throws like a bag of chips at them and then they just start beating the shit out of him and Joe. Joe gets beat up for just being there. Whatever. You don't really have to explain it more than I'm trying to over-explain things, I think. All right, so Joe's in this bathtub. He's in the worst shape of his life. His face is fucked up. His legs are fucked up. Just like in that first scene when we saw him with cuts and bruises all over his body and face. He's lighting a cigarette as Stan runs in and pours more ice into the tub from an ice bucket. Joe, VO. Stan did the best he could to lessen the pain. Stan sprints out the room with the empty ice bucket as Joe is staring up towards a light fixture above the tub, which is hanging precariously. Joe, VO. But it felt like someone or something wanted to end our Olympic dream before the starting gun even went off. Again, it's pointing to the Job story. The light does fall, exposing electrical wires that barely miss hitting the water by inches, but Joe doesn't flinch as he calmly puffs his cigarette. Later that night, we're at the Santa Monica College track. That's just what I named it. Somewhere, wherever. He found a track nearby, and he's just laying flat on his back on the track area of the empty stadium, dressed in his bathrobe. I think this is where the marathon started in 1984, yeah, in LA. So he just wanted to get an early start. He's sleeping at the track where the marathon's going to start the next morning, staring at the stars, and he's sweating and shivering at the same time. He's like pretty much near death at this point. He's just fucked up. Joe, VO. I tried to embrace the pain. It was what got us here in the first place. What made me the favorite to win that race. He rubs his swollen ankles, most likely fractured at this point, then massages dark bruises up and down his legs. Joe, VO. I didn't get a wink of sleep that night. The next morning, the same location, early morning sunlight shines down as excited spectators in the stands wait for the marathon to begin. As the Olympic marathon runners stretch and warm up on the track area. Joe's laying near the track in his bathrobe. Is he in his bathrobe? I guess he was in his bathrobe in the first scene, yeah. Yeah, that night he was in his bathrobe, just hanging out. So he's in the same position as the night before, staring towards the clouds, which are morphing into the 5 Olympic rings in his perception. It's kind of just a callback to the first scene. Maybe he's a little dazed, like concussion too. He's seeing things. In the first scene, we saw him smoking during the marathon and blowing Olympic rings with the smoke rings forming into the Olympic rings. All right. Stan finds him and tapes up his ankles quickly as Joe grabs a cigarette butt off the ground and lights it up. Stan, I was looking all morning for you, kid. How's the ribs? Stan helps Joe put on his socks, sneakers, t-shirt, running shorts, and the runner's bib. Then he pats him on the back, causing Joe to wince in pain and grab at his injured ribs. Stan, just run your race. Only person who can beat you is yourself. Stan hands Joe a fresh pack of Reds as Joe nods in thanks and rolls the pack up inside his shirt sleeve. Now we're at a dive bar at the same time in Atlantic City as Manny stands in front of the window watching the TV inside. Curtis is cradled in his arms as the TV shows the start of the race, as a few other vagrants stand by him, smoke cigs, and drink 40 ounces in brown paper bags. Back in LA, Joe is running behind a pack of runners in the early stages of the race, and he's struggling to reach his usual stride as he wheezes and his socks fill up with blood as these other runners zip by him. Joe voiceover. You hear runners talk all the time about reaching that runner's high. He falls over onto the pavement. In his perception, everything slows down around him, like a heavyweight boxer just knocked out, or just knocked him out in the ring. He vomits as spectators on both sides turn their heads in disgust, and more runners pass by him. Joe voiceover. VO. That moment during a race when time seems to disappear and your existential dread, dreams, doubts, and delusions finally make peace with one another. Stan yells towards him from the side of the street. Stan, get up, kid, you good-for-nothing cunt. Joe rises up slowly and limps forward. So that's kind of a nod to Rocky as well with the Mickey loves you, you son of a bitch. Stan's a little bit more dramatic. Get up, kid, you good-for-nothing cunt. Now back at the dive bar, at the same time, Deborah, Eric, and a few other strippers sit at the bar, watching the race attentively as they drink and smoke. Eric, there you go, Joe. He points towards the TV, then gazes around arrogantly at the other patrons around him. Eric, that kid used to work for me, you know? Until that fucking fire. Real loyal employee, the best. I taught him everything he knows. So Eric has no clue that Joe's the one that burnt down the place. Eric lights a cigar up while Deborah rolls her eyes and smiles. Back in LA during this marathon, Joe runs behind a pack of other marathon runners as he's lighting a cigarette and trying to catch them. Joe, VO. I don't exactly know if I experienced the runner's high that day, but I was either going to win that race or die trying. He finds his usual gear and zooms past the other competitors, determined scowl back on his face as he puffs his cigarette. Joe, VO. So I just kept telling my legs to go. We drift closer towards his bloody socks and his scarred legs. Joe, VO. And they did. Back at the dive bar, Flip, Gabby, and some other prostitutes stand by the bar, their eyes fixed on the race on the TV as they drink and smoke. Flip, come on now, boy, don't be letting Flip down now. Flip grabs Gabby anxiously around the waist. Flip, your boy best be winning this race today, bitch. Gabby ignores him, smiling proudly as she watches Joe sprint by some other competitors. Gabby, he's got this. Just watch the fucking race. I just wanted to add some scenes there. I thought it'd be kind of comical. All the people that he was training around now are watching him run this marathon, like in Cool Runnings. Like another great true story. Well, that's a true story. This isn't a true story. Maybe it will become a true story. I'm going to start training around my neighborhood, running and smoking cigarettes. No, this is not a role for me. But in Cool Runnings, as the Jamaican bobsled team are competing, like all the people back in Jamaica were watching them on TV. It's kind of a tropey type of thing, but it could add some laughs to this story. Back in LA, are we getting ahead of ourselves here? Back in the marathon, where are we at? We're at the Coliseum Stadium as Joe charges inside, not a competitor in sight, as fans cheer him on from their seats and light up cigarettes in tribute. He sprints towards the finish line, crosses, and immediately collapses near the time clock. 1 hour, 59 minutes, and 22 seconds. So he did break the 2-hour mark. At the same time, back at the dive bar, the bar erupts in raucous celebration, like everyone inside just won the race alongside Joe. Deborah smiles, sheds some tears of joy, surrounded by the cross-dressing male, Jimmy, Stan Steeler, and the rest of Joe's adoring supporters. Out the front window, a larger group of vagrants party in the streets, while Manny holds Curtis up and dances around with him. Back in the Coliseum Stadium, Joe is taking his bloody sneakers and socks off, revealing his feet and ankles covered in blisters, and then he's lying on his back, lighting a cigarette and staring at the clouds. Joe Vio. I don't even remember running the last 5 miles of that race. Later on in the Coliseum, the Star-Spangled Banner plays as Joe stands on the gold medal platform, gold medal around his neck, a lit cigarette dangling in his lips. Joe Vio. Many would later criticize my behavior during that ceremony, said I was disrespecting my country. Some even labeled me a dirty commie bastard. He throws up both middle fingers. Joe Vio. Fuck all of them. And fuck you too. American flags wave behind him. Joe Vio. I was just letting go of some pent-up frustration. Don't pretend that any of you really give a shit about any of it. Alright, moving on. We are at a daytime TV news set. We're coming down the home stretch now. The marathon's over. Joe won the gold medal. He's still his usual cheery self. And now we're at a daytime TV news set back in Atlantic City. Joe's on a high chair, gold medal around his neck. As a female anchor and male anchor interview him, and a sign on the wall says, Atlantic City today. The female anchor reaches out and gently touches his knee. Female anchor. Now, Joe, you definitely made Atlantic City proud in the Olympics. The live studio audience cheers. Female anchor. And you even have been called the greatest long distance runner of all time by some. Joe lights a cigarette. Female anchor. But I have to ask, what do you tell all those kids out there about the dangers of smoking? Joe ponders for a few moments, then stares directly into the camera and playfully blows some smoke rings. Joe. These things will kill you. They all share a brief, awkward silence. Male anchor. Okay, well, thanks so much for that, Joe. Let's hear it for him one more time, folks. The studio audience cheers. Audience together. Smokin' Joe, Smokin' Joe. Later that day, Joe is on a city street with the gold medal around his neck as he's signing autographs on the cigarette packs of some of his fans. Joe Vio. Cigarette ads were banned from TV on April Fool's Day, 1970. This is the cigarette ad series of shots, almost like a montage. Very quick. We're now viewing video footage of old Marlboro Man TV ads. Joe Vio. Signed into law by Richard Nixon, of all people. We now view video footage of various cigarette TV ads from the late 1960s and famous classic movie scenes of smoking. Joe Vio. Whatever the future may hold for the cigarette lobby's more than loyal customer base, I think we all get the picture. We now view photos of black lungs, rotting teeth, and gums. Joe Vio. Smoking ain't exactly good for the human anatomy. We view a 1940s magazine ad. More doctors smoke Camels than any other brand. Joe Vio. We've come a long way since the days of doctor-recommended tobacco products. We're ending this cigarette ad series of shots. Why did I put this in here? I don't know. I thought it made sense. It's not the biggest theme of this story, but cigarette smoking is a big part of this, and people have different opinions on it. But yeah, Nixon was actually the one that banned cigarette advertising. All right, now we're inside Stan's car on a different street later that day. Stan's driving down this low traffic street as Joe rests his head out the passenger side window, smoking. Joe VO. I'm sure that makes all you health conscious warriors out there happy. Stan glances over at him. Stan, frantic. We got another interview Wednesday. National media, buddy boy. This is when the big bucks start rolling in. I'm telling you. Might even get you on the fucking Tonight Show. Joe ignores his enthusiasm. Joe VO. To be honest, I really should have put more effort into quitting. Shit. I wish I never started in the first place. Stan reaches over into the glove compartment in front of him and grabs a bag of cocaine. He sticks his finger inside the bag, snorts the powder, then glances towards Joe. Stan, you gotta strike now, while the iron's still hot. The box truck in front of him brakes suddenly. He glances forward, reacts too late, and swerves to the right to avoid the collision, flipping the car over. He slams his head hard into the steering wheel and dies instantly as his neck snaps. Joe hangs halfway out the window, a bloody mess, as gasoline pools around him. He reaches for his matches and tries to light his cigarette, now snapped in half, but they're all doused in gasoline and won't spark. Joe VO. It's bound to kill me one of these days. I almost ended the story there with that scene, and it's still kind of a weird ending that is attractive to me. You have this car crash, Stan dies, Joe's hanging out the window, he's trying to light one of his cigarettes, he's stuck inside the car, probably somewhat paralyzed at this point. He's trying to light his cigarettes, but everything's doused in gasoline. And he's trying to light his matches, which would definitely blow up the whole car, but even his matches are doused in gasoline, so they won't light. And he's just saying, it's bound to kill me one of these days. That's an interesting place to end this, but I still have like 4 more pages to go. We're at a hospital in an emergency room as Joe lays unconscious as doctors perform emergency surgery on him. Joe VO. Sixth unwritten rule of smoking. Don't talk about how many times you tried to quit, especially with a fellow smoker. Hospital, he's now in a private room that night. Joe lays in bed, his eyes shut, his legs raised up in thick cast, and his neck in an unmovable brace. Joe VO. We've all been there. Hypnotism, chewing gum, toothpicks, or just honest to God cold turkey. He opens his eyes, stares blankly towards the ceiling for a few seconds, then passes back out. Joe VO. But nobody wants to hear about your 17th attempt to quit smoking while relaxing on their fucking smoke break. Now he's at a rehab center. This is 3 months later, will be superimposed on the screen. Joe, with some beard growth, tries to walk on his own. He lunges his legs forward a bit, little by little, while gripping onto 2 metal bars for support, but his arms are too weak to carry his limp lower body, and he falls hard to the floor, while 2 rehab nurses rush over to help him back up. Joe VO. The accident left me partially paralyzed from the waist down. Now he's in the workout room of this rehab center 3 months later. He's now appearing with a thicker beard, because that's how you make people look, how you convey the passage of time. You have people have longer and longer beards. He's walking a little better at this point, still gripping onto the metal bars for support, as it's superimposed 3 months later. Joe VO. most experts told me I would be in a chair for the rest of my life. His arms and upper body appear more muscular than before as his determined scowl returns to his face. Now we're outside the rehab center as Joe is limping down the stairs very slowly with the aid of a walking cane. Joe Vio. You already know what I think about most experts. He opens up the dumpster, tosses his gold medal inside, then limps back up the stairs. We're outside the rehab center at nighttime, a little bit later. Well, that same day, it's not nighttime. That's what I meant to say. Manny is digging through the dumpster, picking out pieces of scrap metal and leftover food. He dumps the metal into his shopping cart, already full of scrap, then finds Joe's gold medal in the dumpster, grins and puts it around his neck. Now we're back. Now we're moving to the free clinic from before, and it's nighttime. And Joe's in a janitor's uniform now, and he's mopping up the lobby with a noticeable limp. And it's now 3 months later. Joe Vio. My next path in life may not have been as exciting as my Olympic journey, as he's wringing out the dirty mop. Now it's daytime and outside the free clinic, and Joe's smoking a cigarette on the front stairs. Joe Vio. But I'm pretty happy with my new role. An anxious father carries his sick son, who's about 6 years old, up the stairs, while Joe limps over and opens the door for him. Joe Vio. Even makes me feel like I have a purpose some days. The father nods and thanks and rushes inside. Joe Vio. And it sure beats cleaning up semen stains. All right. Another day, Joe is in slightly better athletic shape, and he's jogging through the streets of Atlantic City in the bright sunshine, and he still has this limp though. But it looks like he's in better condition now. Joe Vio. Even started jogging again. The sun beams down on his face as he lights a cigarette. Joe Vio. Down to about half a pack a day. And I really do plan on quitting altogether one of these days. He jogs a little faster. Joe Vio. But I don't think any of you really care about any of this shit. Now he's down another alley, and he's jogging and stopping to catch his breath, hands on his knees, sweat pouring down, while Manny sits against the wall nearby, reading from the Christian pamphlet, Joe's gold medal around his neck. Joe notices the gold medal, sits next to him, and stretches his aching legs while trying to catch his breath still. Joe. So, what's your story? Manny smiles, then begins to chuckle to himself. It's infectious as Joe joins in, as the two men share some laughter like they were lifelong friends. And that is the end. Page 60 or 59. Alright, it was only 59 pages. And I would end this with another Donald Byrd song called Chance from A New Perspective. And that's how the story ends. Would it have the same feel if I ended it at the car accident? Nah, that's more of a weird, nihilistic type of experience, and I didn't want to go that route. So I added these other parts, because Joe does come back. Manny comes back as the main character in another episode coming up soon, but Joe's a part of that. So really, I could create a series called Atlantic City and just write episodes, because I seem to write my best episodes, or some of them are really funny when it comes to the Atlantic City setting. Man and Deer, this one, the one that's coming up later, it's a bit more political, but not really in a biased way, like the Democrats are better than Republicans, or communism or capitalism. When I have an episode with a political slant. It's really just to show how the whole system is kind of fucked. That's at least what I was going for, I think. But it's not the whole thing. It's not like a completely political type of experience. It's another character study, and I really enjoy it. Manny's another one of my favorite characters, and I always pictured him as Giancarlo Esposito from Breaking Bad, Gus Fring, and other stuff he's been in. He's in that movie with Tim Robbins and Martin Lawrence, Nothing to Lose. That's a pretty decent movie. So that's what we got in this story. Joe was able to fight his way back to win the Olympic gold medal. He comes home, the local hero, soon to be forgotten as he's now living his life as a janitor. So it's a Job story. It really is. It was in my head as I was writing this. The story of Job, how Job kept getting fucked and fucked and fucked. And I don't really know what else to say. What did God really do to Job? Did he like kill his wife and shit? What did God do to Job? It's like God and the devil are like, hey, we're bored. Let's bet on this fucking dude. See if he can lose his faith. What did God do to Job? Let's see what comes up. Because I really don't remember that story. In the book of Job, God allowed Satan to afflict Job by removing his protection, permitting the loss of Job's wealth, children, and health. All right, well, that sucks. These trials were permitted to test Job's integrity, following a challenge from Satan, after which God ultimately restored Job's wealth, family, and health, doubling his original possessions. So, if you survive the test of Satan and God, you will be duly rewarded. I don't know. I'm not making fun of this story, but I kind of am. I guess the people who wrote this book were like, all right, you got to give it a happy ending. Satan's able to torture Job, and then he survives it. So he finally gets to live his paradise on earth, I guess. See, everyone could interpret this story differently. The Buddhists would be like, life is pain, life is suffering. So really the best outcome for Job would be to die. Kill me, God, so I can enjoy eternal paradise in heaven. Instead, God just gave him a bunch of material wealth and restored his health and children and family. Yeah, I don't know, man. The Old Testament is not something I really return to myself personally for inspiration in life. I don't really agree with eye for an eye and all this shit. I agree with like the protection spell philosophy that I talked about before, that everyone as they're born is given this universal baptism, not in any religion, just that they're protected from bad juju. They're protected from hoodoo and voodoo and anyone who tries to put curses on other people. If somebody puts a curse on me, then they would get it reflected back onto them, and their family and their bloodlines will get fucked up. Everyone should have that protection as a universal humanity. It's a human baptism, a baptism based on just human golden rule, not specifically a part of an organized religion. That if anyone tries to put bad shit on you, they would automatically get it reflected onto them and their children and so forth and so forth. Their entire generation to come would be cursed with the same affliction. I think everyone should be born with that, because that's how global politics is. Mutually assured destruction. You send nuclear bombs towards me, I'm going to send them to you, and we're both going to die horribly and miserably, and that would be the end of our cultures. That's how people, so far, we've prevented nuclear war because of mutually assured destruction. So it's the same philosophy. But the Old Testament, in terms of eye for an eye and this vengeful, wrathful God, it doesn't connect with me. I think it does more harm than good, to be honest. I grew up with the Bible. I know it's a hit and miss thing. Some books connect with me. Some stories connect with me. Some lessons kind of make me want to question everything. Like, what the fuck is this all about? And I don't know, the book of Job is kind of like that, I guess. Like, it's a good story. You shouldn't lose your faith if that's what leads you in life to be a good person. And the devil's going to come and challenge you and put all this shit on you. And if you survive it and never let go of God's love through all the pain and misery, then God will reward you in the end with double your earthly possessions. Like, I don't know. I don't even own anything, so what would I get? I don't own shit. Like, what's my reward, God? Come on, man. Yeah, some of those stories don't really vibe with my general philosophy on life. I don't know if I'm more on the Eastern side, thinking that why do people want to put pain on other people? Because certain people don't align with your beliefs, so you think you have the right to fuck with that person. That's basically what it comes down to, because their parents did it to them and blah, blah, blah. It's that whole tradition of bullshit that continues in a family, in a bloodline. It just continues because people allow it to continue, and nobody speaks up and stops the bullshit. So yeah, I've never read the book of Job. I might have skimmed it when I was writing this, because again, the Donald Byrd, A New Perspective, look at the track listings. They're very like a spiritual, almost like a born again thing. Donald Byrd, I don't know what his religion was, but I don't know if this was like his born again album. Donald Byrd, A New Perspective, meaning, or I don't know if there would be anything on that. I kind of think it's something involved with that, but I don't know. It's a modern hymnal, 1963, A New Perspective by Donald Byrd, is a jazz album that blends hard bop with spirituals and gospel, featuring a choir to create a modern hymnal representing spiritual, cultural, musical shifts. It's really good. I think it really does affect me from that particular standpoint as a spiritual type of exploration through music, because I don't get a lot of spirituality in my life. I used to pray the rosary when I first returned after being homeless. I went down that line. I was like, I'm going to pray the rosary, even though I don't go to church and I don't consider myself to be any religion. I would pray the rosary because that's the only prayer I know. And I stopped doing that months ago. I kind of just fell out of all that stuff. My own cynicism and nihilism started creeping back in. It's still there, kind of. I just lose focus and don't feel like doing it anymore. It's good just as a form of meditation, but I stopped doing it. And maybe I could get some healthy habits up and running again at some point. But again, I'm trying to leave New Jersey. New Jersey is not the place I want to live. It's a different perspective. It's a new perspective. Let's go back to Donald Byrd. That's what I need, a new perspective. That's not going to come from New Jersey and the stupid bullshit that I've had to deal with in my life over the last few years. So I'm a lot like Joe in this story, trying to reach the fucking finish line. I'm not running a marathon, but it kind of feels the same way as a metaphor. And I'm not the only one. Anyone listening to this can find a time in their life when they felt like that. Like they've worked so hard, no one gives a fuck. Why should they give a fuck about anything? Because nobody else gives a fuck. Everyone's in it for themselves. And that's just how it is, at least in my reality right now. Is it like this everywhere in America or throughout the world? I don't know. I just don't give a shit. I don't want to say yes or no. I just want to say New Jersey's not the place. It's just not the place. That's all I really know for a fact. So if I can reach the West Coast and start doing this project, you're going to notice I'll become like Joe when he first started running his marathons again, getting back into that mindset where you know you have a purpose in life and you're actually able to do it freely. Your pursuit of happiness is not restricted by all this bullshit thrown at your fucking face over and over again. Just like Satan constantly taking shits on Job's life just to see if Joe will keep his faith. Or Job. Joe or Job, they're the same person almost. So I could have named Joe Job in this story, but that's not very subtle. And it's not exactly a mimic of the story of the book of Job. It was never intended to be exactly the same thing. Joe is constantly being fucked over by family members, by strangers, by the legal system in a way, by unforeseen events that he can't explain. Just life in general. Some people are constantly with that brain cloud, like Joe versus the volcano. Maybe there's a hint of that too in Joe versus the volcano, which is a decent movie. I'll give that movie some credit. I remember watching that as a kid. Or people always walk under that rain cloud, like that cartoon character. I'm trying to get away from that, but it's very hard for me to not have these rants like this, where I'm constantly talking about my own frustrations, because I feel like I should be way more advanced in my life at this point. Not in terms of marriage and kids, not in terms of being rich with like 3 cars and all that shit. That is not interesting to me. I want enough of a financial security so I can continue doing my projects how they're supposed to be done. Talking into my phone every day for 3 to 6 hours, and does it achieve my goal any closer? Am I creeping towards my goal because I'm speaking into my fucking phone for 6 hours today? Like, I'm saying I could have been doing way more productive things than rehashing what this story is, the themes involved, how this relates to my life and my traumatic episodes of COVID and 2020 and all that dark shit. Like, I have to go back to that because that's what led to this creative outburst where I wrote all this shit. So, of course, I need to go back to it and rehash these stories, and that brings up all these frustrated feelings again. Because if I was a lazy person, I would barely even exist. I would never sound like I sound right now, because a lazy person has no right to complain. A lazy person has no right to say anything that I've said to this point. But if you work as hard as I've worked for a goal, and you know you've reached it, and you know you have a good product, but you're being held back, and you don't know how to get across that invisible resistance that just fucks with your life for no fucking reason. How do you get past it? It's a point of contention that I've dealt with for a long time. I think Joe is just that Job character. Why isn't he more angry like I am right now? Why isn't he more vitriolic and more angry towards his mother or towards society in general? because all the shit he had to go through, and he feels like a broken man, but he just keeps going, like Sisyphus, that story too. It's similar to the Job story. Somebody told me that this story is more like Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the fucking hill. It's more like that than Job. But I think it's really just a combination of the two philosophies. They can be both. It doesn't have to be a competition. This is either a Job story or a Sisyphus story. Because, yeah, Joe is Sisyphus in a way because he keeps going to that job at the video store, even though it's disgusting, until he finally loses it and burns the place down. But he's also Job because now he has a path in life. His motivations are leading him to a good place to get back into healthy shape and win the Olympics. Those are all, more than positive goals. If you want to train to be an Olympic athlete, not many people live that life. That's an amazing life. People could only dream about a life like that, where they're that skilled to be an Olympic athlete. It's a crazy thing to want to be as a kid. You tell your parents or your teachers, I'm going to be an Olympic athlete. Well, good luck, because there's only a handful of those, or more than that, but yeah, it's a different level of success that most people don't attain. I'd be happy just to successfully finish a marathon if I can actually do that before people do it in their older age. Like I'm 44 right now. If I keep training and live a healthy life like I plan to live, then maybe I could do a half marathon and do a real marathon one day. But at this point, yeah, I'm trying to develop a good frame of mind to have that fire within me, but also, to also know how to manage it better. Because you can't be full speed ahead all day long, all night long. You have to know how to manage your energy. And I'm pretty good with that. The problem is other people who put their shit on me. No matter where I go, I feel like people will be putting their bullshit on me for whatever fucking bullshit reason. And that's the biggest problem I'm dealing with. If people weren't putting their bullshit on me, I'd be in a different frame of mind. Or at least if I could defend myself against people and protect myself in a way and move into the life I want to live, in the type of a lifestyle that I want to get back to. In this time period, 2021, I was exercising every day and meditating, trying to get into that type of a mindset. But I was dealing with a lot of shit, so I kind of needed that. It was just constant anxiety and paranoia at work and at home and random places I went to, grocery stores. It was just a lot of weird shit, man. It's kind of still there, but I don't go anywhere anymore. I'm just staying isolated, doing this project. But if I do go across the country, what am I going to be in for? I don't know. All I want to do is be able to survive and live a good, healthy life and achieve the simple goal I have for myself. I'm not trying to do something crazy here. I'm just trying to make art. The biggest part of my life at this point would be to make the music, because that's going to take the longest. That could take, anywhere from 10 years to do that shit. I got a lot of shit to put together and figure out how to produce it. So the music side is definitely the more in line with this story of a marathon. It's going to take a long, long time to do. But the longer it's prolonged, the less I'm able to do it, which is why I'm sounding like this, because it is a load of bullshit. It's a complete load of bullshit. No one has the right to put your bullshit onto somebody else. You don't have the right to do that. It's not an American thing. It's anywhere. You don't have the right to put your bullshit onto other people. It's as simple as that. It's the same as the golden rule or anything else. And I don't feel like I'm giving that level of courtesy, if you want to put it nicely like that. I don't receive that level of respect and courtesy. I just get bullshit thrown in my face by people who have no right to throw anything at anybody. It's kind of like throwing the first stone, but it's different than that. Putting your bullshit on other people is a different thing than judging somebody. I think the Jesus story of the stones, let he who has never sinned throw the first stone. Like, that's more about people who are judgmental and judge other people, think they're better than other people. It plays into that feeling of superiority and narcissism. Yeah, some people are narcissists and they don't think they can do anything wrong, or they'll never admit that they did anything wrong. That's a big problem too. I feel like if narcissists have children, what do they teach their children? Like, hey kids, don't ever say you're wrong. Don't ever apologize. Just keep doing whatever you're doing and never admit fault, because that's what you're going to need when you enter corporate America. Like, there's a level of narcissism that's completely insane, where you think not only will you never admit you're wrong about something, you'll never even intimate it. Is that the right word? You'll never even consider it that you could be wrong about something. Your first instinct is to combat someone's. If you do something bad to someone, your first instinct is to either cover it up or find something on that person so they won't come after you. The last thing you're thinking about is apologizing or trying to make it right or admitting you're wrong. That's exactly what the problem is in a lot of corporate settings. Absolutely. It's that plausible deniability. Oh, we fucked up. What do we do now? We make the victim the one responsible for everything. And we re-victimize that person, make them feel like the one that's doing something wrong. Or we find something in the future to hold against that person. And if that doesn't work, we'll just get rid of them, try to pay them off so they shut up. And yeah, there's nothing I'm saying here that I'm like the only person that ever went through this. There's millions of people with similar stories of being fucked over like that. Yeah. So that plays a big part of this story. How do you handle those frustrations? I said it yesterday. I could have just turned to alcohol, go to the bar every day, just get drunk until I ran out of money and died. But I actually did good things. I stayed healthy. No drugs, no alcohol, nothing bad in my life. I even gave up porn eventually. Porn was like my only vice to release all this aggression. Porn was the way I could actually release some of this shit. But I gave up pornography. For whatever fucking reason, like maybe a year ago now. And once you give it up, you really don't miss it. Like, I never be like, oh, I want to watch porn so bad. But when you're reliant on pornography to just get off, it does become a part of your life. Like, I need to jerk off so I can go to sleep, or just feel like all this tension is released. But at this point, all that shit's out of my life. When I get boners now, I'm like, fuck, I don't want a boner because I don't want to feel anything. But yeah, I haven't ejaculated, haven't masturbated in like 9 months now, which is probably a record. I don't think I've ever gone this long. And physically, I don't think it really has done anything negatively. I don't feel any unhealthier, but maybe I got pent up frustration because of that. I don't know. I did this before. When I was writing these screenplays, I went about 7 or 8 months without jerking off. or doing anything else, fucking my pillows, or doing anything else masturbatory. And that's where I'm at now. It's probably been about 9 months now. So it's kind of weird to think about. But I don't think about it anymore like I used to. If I get horny now, I just kind of let it pass after a couple minutes. That's why Instagram became dangerous. As Instagram became half naked women, eventually that's what it became. Without even looking for it, and it's just like in my face. So it becomes kind of a dangerous temptation to just go jerk off real quick. But that's another test from Satan to see if you're a slave to lust. Yeah. So there's some connections to Joe, as you can hear in this rant that I'm on right now. There's some aspects of Joe related to my life experiences. There's some aspects related to the Job story. I even put it when I shared this story the first time on Substack. The first time I shared it on Substack, I added a quote from the book of Job, and I read it today and it made sense to me. This is Job 23:8. If I go forward, he is not there, or backwards, I cannot perceive him. On the left he hides, and I cannot behold him. I turn to the right, but I cannot see him. But he knows the way that I take. When he has tested me, I shall come out like gold. I really like that little passage, especially because of the gold symbolism and the gold medal that is a symbol in this story. But like I said, I don't think I've read the whole, or I don't think I've ever read the entire book of Job, so I can't really speak to it more than what I've said, but I got the general idea of what the story is about. And I'm sure there are plenty of other stories related to that type of wager between the devil and God. We're going to test this guy, see if he's strong enough to survive through all of these trials that we put on him or her. I'm sure this goes to women as well. If you want one more musical influence on this, since I'm really ranting at this point, let me change subjects. Heartless Bastards. Heartless Bastards, one of my favorite bands from Austin, Texas. They have a song called Marathon that maybe was in my subconscious as I wrote some of these dialogue lines. It's a really good song. Really, really good. So go check that out. Heartless Bastards or the song Marathon by Heartless Bastard. I shared it on my original post. I shared this story November 6th, 2023. So I probably wrote this in 2022, and then I finally shared it later on Substack. I don't remember at this point how the process went, but it was around that time period. And yeah, so go check out Heartless Bastards, one of the best bands of the last few decades. And I guess I'm going to end it here. I think I've talked about everything I wanted to talk about. Got all my ranting out, at least for today. I'm sure I'll be ranting again tomorrow. Tomorrow's screenplay is episode 8, and it's called Once in a Lifetime. It's based on the Talking Heads song. Again, at this point, I was kind of losing focus on what I wanted to write about. And if you ever read that play, Waiting for Godot, or watched that movie, there is a YouTube, either some clips or the whole play, and it's really good. I'm usually not interested in playwrights, but that one was really interesting. Waiting for Godot, it's just like two guys talking to each other the whole time. Not a lot of stuff happens. But I'll go into that more tomorrow as I remind myself kind of the atmosphere of that one if you think this one was like a fever dream, the next one is completely a fever dream, like way more obscenely absurd than this one. This one is pretty tame, like to the point where I'm comparing it to Happy Gilmore. The next one is obscenely just in your face as a fever dream with no rhyme or reason for a lot of the dialogue. And you'll hear what I'm talking about tomorrow. Um, really, the ranting I went on this second half of this one was the only obscenity. I was pretty clean until that. Then I start thinking about the past and all the bullshit that I went through and how that affected me. Even though it got me to this point, was it worth it? If I could go back in time, would I go back to 2017 when I was still smoking and doing other unhealthy things? I was still gambling, still smoking cigarettes. I was still eating shittier food, and I probably wasn't drinking at that point. But I was doing things that I don't do now. But I was happier. I was a much happier person before all the shit went down in 2019, 2020, and continuing till today. I was a happier person in 2016, 17, and 18. I had more security in my life. I was at least able to make an income and build money and save money and live a comfortable existence where I thought I had my shit together. At this point, I'm more evolved in my artistic life, and I feel like I've proven that over and over again, and I've reached a point where I could grow this business into a real living entity, not just paper, but an actual movie production to get these things produced. That's where I've gone since 2020, but I don't think I'm a happier person, because how can I feel happy and move forward with my life if I don't have opportunity, if I don't have security, if I don't have those two things? Everything else is kind of for nothing. It's a waste of time. If you can't survive on your own 2 feet, then what's the fucking point, you know? It's a sad way to look at it, but that's how you're brought up in a capitalist society. It's not exactly, hey kid, it's every man for himself, so get used to it. They're not really teaching you that in show and tell, but maybe they should. Maybe they should teach people that this is live and let die, or only the strong survive. That's a better cliche. Only the strong survive, children. Like that, when I wrote that scene in Elegant Eccentrics with Kim at Career Day, when he's like, hey children, I'm here to warn you about the society that your parents have so blindly constructed. That's what I was talking about. I don't know when that hits you. I guess when you're in your young teenage years, it hits you what the world's really going to do. It's going to spit you out, and then you have to be like Rocky Balboa, keep getting up and keep getting up. You could look at Rocky as a Job story. It's the same type of an appeal as Job. Rocky Balboa never had opportunities. He was working for the mob or whoever, collecting debts from people. And then he finally got his chance, whatever. I forget how he was. I don't remember now why they chose him. It was just the 1776. It was like the birth of independence, right? The 200-year anniversary. And I guess they wanted to make it like that. The underdog versus Apollo Creed. Almost like another underdog story, I guess. Yeah, I forget the plot line there. Why did they pick Rocky to fight Apollo? I don't know. Just to give, like, it's another Vince Papale story. Something with Philadelphia and underdogs. I don't understand, but it's a cool connection. Even when the Eagles won the Super Bowl in 2017, it was hungry dogs run faster, and everyone was wearing underdog masks, and these dog masks, because that was like the motivation. No one likes us. No one likes us. That was the motivation to actually get to the finish line over Tom Brady. And yeah, it was. I guess it worked. That type of mentality, no fear. Let's just fucking um, do this shit, leave a legacy. And I guess that mentality works sometimes. Why did they pick Rocky? This is the last thing, then I'll end this. Why did they pick Rocky to fight Apollo Creed? Was it just they wanted to pick an underdog, right? That was the whole marketing angle. And I guess it was successful. Yeah, it was a publicity stunt. The Italian stallion, the symbolic opportunity to fight an underdog in Philadelphia during the bicentennial. Yeah. All right, I was pretty on. It was just a simple marketing angle of that. So, yeah, I need some of that shit. I need some of that magic to have that marketing on my side for once. And hopefully I get there. I'll end it by saying that this is the most workable script. You find some young upcoming actor to play the lead role, and that's it. That's really all you need. If you can find the lead actor, then you have this movie. That's the most important thing. Somebody in their early 20s who has that stoic demeanor and is able to promote that type of atmosphere, that Job character. I think that's really the whole. Of course, that's the key. You have to find the right leading man. Could anyone else have played Cool Hand Luke? I don't think so, but who knows? Maybe. I'm sure somebody else could have done that role, but you just look at Paul Newman's character and you're like, you can't really think of anyone else playing Cool Hand Luke or Forrest Gump. Could anyone else have played Forrest Gump besides Tom Hanks? I can't really picture anybody else. Maybe like Sean Penn. But even that, I don't think it works. Tom Hanks is just like, he's also can portray the everyman like to a really good degree. I don't know. I really don't know. You try to picture somebody else playing Tom Hanks and it just doesn't work. Some people are just made for that role like that. But I'm going to end this here. I did a little bit more ranting in this one, but I think I was prepared for that because that's my reality. I'm not making shit up. That's what I'm dealing with right now. And until I'm able to move forward, yeah, I just try to get through those feelings the best I can and just keep looking forward. But it's very hard to do so when not only there's something that I know is blocking me, that I can't defend myself. That's what it seems like. I'm unable to really defend myself against stuff that isn't out there as transparent in a transparent fashion. It's impossible to. And that's where I'm still at in my head. And it's not always like that. Like, that's why I'm doing shit like this, so I can escape and give myself other angles to portray what I'm trying to do. That's all this really is. And tomorrow's going to get even weirder. Today was like fun for me. The story today I could read this script again right now and probably laugh again. There's some darker points, but most of it's pretty funny. Just picturing a marathon runner with a cigarette, smoking, and having fans come out and light a cigarette as he's running, or he's running to the side and the people are holding cigarettes for him to grab. That's when it becomes similar to a Happy Gilmore experience, because Happy Gilmore brought that element to golf, just like Joe is going to bring a different element, working class spirit, the underdog sensation to marathon running. I don't know if there's a snobbiness to long distance running. I don't think there is. When I think of golf, I just think of a bunch of rich white dudes or just very wealthy people playing golf. When I think of marathon, I can think of anyone. It's not really a class thing. I just think of really determined people who train for months and months for one day to run 26 miles, that trek of glory to say, I actually finished a marathon in my life. And I did it with a smile on my face. I put all the resistance behind, shoved that shit up my ass and just fucking did it. Because who gives a shit? You're going to die anyway. You might as well do what you like. And I guess that's a good bookend when you talk about absurdism. That's what it's boiled down to. Absurdism, and the person I was listening to mentioned Camus and his famous quote about having a cup of coffee, or I'm either going to have a cup of coffee or commit suicide or kill myself. I think that's this famous quote that this podcast was talking about. It was the one about druids. This gentleman was speaking about his experience, how he moved from a more nihilistic approach to living to absurdism to all these different levels to try to get peace of mind. And then he found the nature worship, or whatever you want to call it, nature, getting back to nature through druidism, druidry, however you term it, and more nature-based healing like that. And he said the same thing that I just repeated. I'm stealing it from him. He mentioned how absurdism is different than nihilism because you can approach it the same way, but your life path could be different because you actually almost get a surge of motivation to be freed from all that shit. If your life's meaningless, then all those people blocking your path and all the bullshit they're trying to put on you is just as meaningless and just as powerless and just as whatever. So let that shit wither away and do what you want to do in life. It's kind of a hopeful approach. It's a type of stoicism as well. I don't know if Joe will be considered an absurdist because he's just kind of going with the flow at this point through all, well, I was going to say the ups and downs, but it was mostly downs. But he did win the gold medal, so that was cool. He did get to be a local hero, and I guess he was happiest at the end as just a janitor helping people like that. It's a noble profession. He's working at that free clinic where he's had plenty of run-ins there trying to fix him up. Like, we saw him in there twice, but the way his life was going, he's probably been in there his entire life with different ailments and injuries. So now he ends up as a janitor helping this place run. So that's probably making him even happier than running in marathons. But it doesn't have to be one or the other. Like, he could still do both, really. But is that absurd, really? I don't think so. So I don't consider Joe to be an absurdist, or whatever term you want to put him. I just picture him as a Job character, as an underdog, somebody who just takes it as a stoic type of philosophy in life. And I guess that's whatever you want to look at it as. Is that a positive way to approach things? Or are you an eye for an eye person? Or what other philosophy do you want to put there? That's a longer debate with other people, but I'm not going to debate that with myself. But I did say that the eye for an eye doesn't make sense to me. It really doesn't. Being able to protect yourself is different to me. If somebody's trying to put bad shit on you, they should get it reflected back on them, regardless of your actions. So it's a different type of a response in my head. Mutually assured destruction seems to be the workable paradigm globally in our current version of humanity. That's what's working. Mutually assured destruction. And yeah, it's just boiling it down to a more individual experience, but same mentality, same philosophy. Because mutually assured destruction is not eye for an eye. It's saying, I'm protecting myself by equipping myself with the same weaponry, and if you fuck with me, you're going to get fucked with. It's almost like, it's similar to eye for an eye, but it's not exactly the same. It's like preventing that person from actually going through with it in the first place because they know it's going to happen to them. So unless they're suicidal, then, it seems to be a workable philosophy. But who knows? I'm sure something else will come up in the future. A smarter person will develop something better than this mutually assured destruction. Somebody else will come up with a more humane response or a more efficient response where we don't have to waste time thinking about these things. I think about this shit way too much. Not on a daily basis, but when it comes up in my head or in passing, then I'll think about it for a while. Like I obviously think about these things if these screenplays feature elements like that. And it's not just this one. These same themes have come up in other stories as well. So when it's in my head, I do kind of obsess over these things. But yeah, I wouldn't really call myself, and I said that, I wouldn't call myself an absurdist or a nihilist. I wouldn't call myself anything. I'm just a human being. I'm just an idiotic dude trying to make cool shit. And this one will be the coolest thing, I think. I really want to see this made just so I could just to see what the movie trailer will look like. You have this actor that nobody knows, and he's smoking a cigarette running this marathon. You don't think that will get people interested? Especially as we approach Olympics in 2 years, repeat of 1984 in Los Angeles, another Olympic go in America. Like, it's perfect, man. It's perfect for this time. But I can't do anything else but try to sell it like that. Yeah, like I was very excited to do this one because I knew it would lead to these thoughts that, yeah, this is really workable. This is really workable as an indie film. And tomorrow is going to get really weird. So I'm more wary about going through the screenplay tomorrow because it's a totally different experience, a totally different writing process. And I'll explain that more. It was a total stream of consciousness where I pretended I was dreaming as I wrote the screenplay once in a lifetime, which is the one I'll read tomorrow. I wrote it like I was dreaming. I'm like, if I was dreaming, where would this scene go? And how would this dialogue go? Because it is written like a dream, like a fever dream, like a really disturbing, delusional experience, like an acid trip. Not that I know, but I've never really been on one. But that's kind of what it feels like as I read through it and think about how you would film these scenes for the script tomorrow. And it is based on the Talking Heads song. So again, I'll talk about the music inspirations and some of the deeper themes and how it connects to my own life. because every one of these episodes has some connection to me, some more than others, but I'll leave it there. Tomorrow, you'll understand what I'm talking about as I read through it, and we'll see how that one goes. How much I rant about my frustrations in life, because it has a similar type of connection to my life in that degree, but maybe I'll try to filter myself a little better and change course to a more existential conversation just about random nonsense instead of always making it a more internalized analysis of why I'm feeling like this, why I'm feeling stuck and in a rut, and sounding like I'm playing the victim. And I don't want to sound like that, but I'm not. That's not why I'm saying these things. I just want to know why I'm being put in this position. I'm not playing the victim. I'm not saying anyone owes me anything or some entitlement that I feel I deserve. I'm just saying I would like to know why I have no opportunity in this point in my life. That's what it feels like. And it's a miserable way to just to coast without knowing where your security is going to come from, without knowing how you're going to incorporate all this work you've done into a real financially viable business. So yeah, I'll try not to talk about this shit tomorrow. I'm just going to get weird with existential nonsense because that's what the story's about. And yeah, stay tuned for that. If you're tired of me whining, then tomorrow's a good, well, theoretically, it'll be a good 2 hour, 4 hour discussion about existential nonsense. So that should be interesting because I'm not really good at speaking at those things either, or at least not as good as other people that I listen to. But, we'll see how it goes. It'll be a very intentionally experimental reading session as I go through the screenplay tomorrow.